There's a moment that decides everything. Not when you're taken, not when the gun is pointed at you, but later, when you realize no one is coming. That's when people break, or do what Kara Robinson did. Kara Robinson lived in Columbia, South Carolina. It was the kind of city people think of as safe. Schools, neighborhoods, parks, quiet streets, ordinary families. Places like that make people feel protected. Kara's family had wanted that too. But by the summer of 2002, life was no longer steady. Her parents had divorced, and although Kara tried to stay strong, the change hit her hard. She lived with her mother, saw her father on weekends, and tried to keep moving forward. She leaned on her friends, on summer, on plans, on anything that still felt normal. Kara was 15. She had friends, a boyfriend named Chris, and the usual mix of teenage worries and routines. She was active, independent, and more interested in being outside than in getting attention. She liked bikes, horses, and freedom. The people close to her knew her as real, energetic, and tough. On June 23rd, Kara stayed overnight at her friend Heather's house. The next day they planned to meet friends and maybe go to the lake. It looked like one of those simple summer days no one expects to remember. On the morning of June 24th, Kara talked to Chris on the phone. He said he could not go because of practice, and they agreed to see each other later that evening. It was the last normal conversation before her life split in two. As the girls were getting ready, Heather's mom asked if someone could water the flowers outside. Kara offered to do it. It seemed like nothing, just one small detail in an ordinary day. Kara stepped outside with a hose and started watering the flower beds. Everything around her looked calm, too calm to feel dangerous. At one point, she noticed a green Pontiac slowly drive down the street. It did not seem threatening. A minute later, the car came back and stopped near the house. A white man, around 30, stepped out. He was tall, wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a cap, and he had papers in his hand. He looked ordinary, like a neighbor, someone asking for directions, somebody trying to reach an adult. That was what made him dangerous. He walked up and asked whether her parents were home. Kara said no, the adults were at work. He held out the papers as if he wanted to leave them for the homeowners. She stepped closer. That was when he pulled a gun. Everything changed instantly. He pressed the gun to her neck and quietly told her to walk to the car. He did not shout or panic. His calm was worse than rage. It told Kara right away that this was a man who felt fully in control. And Kara understood something critical. If she screamed, ran, or fought right then, he would shoot her. So she obeyed. He led her to the back seat. There was a large plastic storage container there. He ordered her to get inside. With a gun on her, she had no choice. Kara climbed in, he closed the lid, and the car pulled away. The abduction took only minutes. But inside those minutes, Kara made the decision that would later save her life. She forced herself not to panic. That did not mean she was not terrified. She was. But she understood that panic would only make things worse. So instead of thinking about what might happen next, she focused on one thing: survive. In her mind, she created 3 simple rules. Stay calm. Do not provoke him. Remember everything. As the car moved, Kara started collecting details. There was a serial number on the lid of the container. And she memorized it. She counted turns. She tracked time as best she could. She noticed the smell of red Marlboro cigarettes. She listened to the radio and the music. Even trapped in darkness, her mind kept working. She already understood that if she got out, even the smallest detail could matter. The car eventually stopped. The man opened the container. They were in an empty field. He gagged her, handcuffed her, and tied her legs. Most people in that moment would collapse into fear. Kara did not stop thinking. Running now would have meant a bullet in the back. So again, she chose the same thing: obey for now, watch, listen, remember. Back at Heather's house, no one understood yet what had happened. When Heather came outside, the hose was lying in the grass. Kara's things were still there. Kara was gone. At first it looked strange, but not yet like a disaster. Then it quickly became clear that something was badly wrong. Heather called Kara's mother, Deborah, thinking maybe Kara had been picked up for some family reason. Deborah knew nothing about it. That was when the real panic started. Deborah drove to Heather's house immediately and called Kara's father, Ron, on the way. He was out of state, but he started heading back right away. Chris knew nothing. A missing persons report was filed quickly. On the surface, it seemed obvious. A 15-year-old girl had vanished in broad daylight, leaving behind her belongings, her plans, and her friend. But in the early hours, police did not immediately treat it like an abduction. As happens too often in teenage cases, there was talk that she may have left on her own. To her family, that was absurd. Kara would not have walked away barefoot, said nothing, and abandoned everything in the middle of the day. But mistakes like that cost time, and sometimes those are the hours that matter most. Meanwhile, the man took Kara to an apartment. Inside, the place looked completely ordinary. A television, furniture, pictures on the wall, everyday objects. That normal appearance made it worse. It looked like a place where normal people lived, but underneath it was something deeply wrong. He brought her into a room, and Kara understood why she had been taken. Then he began asking questions, her parents' names, their address, whether she had a boyfriend, what his name was, whether they had been intimate. He wrote her answers down in a notebook. These were not random questions. He was trying to figure out how quickly people would come looking and how risky it would be to keep her. Then he laid out the rules. The gun would always be nearby. If she screamed or tried to run, he would kill her. She had to do what he said. It was not just a threat. He was trying to break her down and control everything. But even then, Kara held onto the same mental pattern: do not provoke, observe, remember. He assaulted her. Later, Kara said that in that moment it felt as if she separated her mind from her body so she would not lose herself completely. She forced herself to stare at a wolf tapestry above the bed and hold onto it as something fixed and real in the middle of total horror. Afterward, he sat her in front of the television. At that point, Kara made another critical decision. Direct resistance was impossible, but if she could get him to relax and talk, she might learn something useful. So she started asking questions and acted as if she was listening, even as if she believed him. It was a risk, but it worked. He started talking about himself. He said he had passed exams early, did not go to college because of money, served 9 years in the Navy, worked in manufacturing, and planned to go back to San Diego. Kara did not know what was true and what was a lie, but she remembered every word anyway. And right here, if you value real stories like this and the details that actually change outcomes, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow, and it helps more people find these cases. Sometimes one small detail can change everything, and that is exactly why stories like this matter. The longer Kara stayed in that apartment, the more certain she became that this was not a man acting on impulse. Everything about him suggested preparation and control. Later, he forced her to take drugs, watch pornography, and shower while he watched. Even then, she kept collecting information. In the bathroom and bedroom, she noticed signs that a woman lived there too: tampons, a second toothbrush, a hairbrush with long red hair. In the kitchen, she saw notes on the refrigerator with the names of a doctor and a dentist, and she memorized them. On the wall was a calendar with a Disneyland trip marked on it. He offered her food. She refused. She did not trust the food, the water, or anything else coming from him. Later that evening, he turned on the news to see whether anyone was looking for her. There was nothing. No urgent report. No sign that the outside world fully understood what had happened. For him, that meant he was still safe. For Kara, it meant one thing: no one was coming fast enough. She would have to save herself. When it was time to sleep, he ordered her back into the container. After everything that had happened, going back into that cramped darkness felt like disappearing all over again. But she obeyed. Later, he gave her Valium, cuffed one wrist to the bed, chained one leg to the bed frame, and then lay down beside her and went to sleep. On the morning of June 25th, Kara woke up to sunlight. About 18 hours had passed since she had been kidnapped. He was still asleep beside her. At that moment, she realized one thing clearly: if there was a chance, it was now. First, she tried to slip her hand out of the cuff, but that was impossible. Then she focused on the clip attaching her to the bed. She could not undo it with her hands, so she started working at it with her teeth. Slowly, carefully, barely breathing. Any sound could wake him. But eventually, the clip loosened. Then she freed her leg. Now came the most dangerous part: getting out without waking a man who could kill her in 1 second. Every movement felt loud. Every creak of the floor sounded like a gunshot. She put on shorts, left the room, and reached the door. But the exit was almost barricaded. Locks, a board, objects shoved in front of it. He had planned even for that. Kara carefully removed each thing one by one, making as little sound as possible. Finally, the door opened. And she ran. She ran through the apartment complex without looking back. She was sure he would be right behind her, about to come out, catch her, or shoot her. But she did not stop. At one point she saw a car with two men inside. She ran to it, knocked on the window, held up the handcuff still attached to her wrist, and yelled that she had been kidnapped. At first they were confused. Then they understood this was real. They let her in and drove her to the police station. At the station, Kara said, "My name is Kara Robinson. I was kidnapped. I just escaped." Then she started giving details. One after another. The doctor's name, the dentist's name, the green Pontiac, the wolf tapestry, the smell of cigarettes, signs that a woman lived there. The container. Everything she had stored in her mind became the foundation of the case. Police rushed to the apartment complex, and despite everything she had just lived through, Kara agreed to go with them. She wanted one thing, for him to be found. She could not identify the exact apartment at first, but she started listing details again. The apartment manager recognized what she was describing. It was apartment 301. When officers entered, nearly everything matched Kara's description. But the kidnapper was already gone. He had escaped. Still, the apartment was full of evidence. Weapons, restraints, items showing the crime had been planned. Then they found a metal chest. What was inside showed that the man they were dealing with was not just a kidnapper, but a predator with a much darker history. There were records, items connected to stalking girls, material tied to sexual crimes against minors, and newspaper clippings about unsolved murders of teenage girls in Virginia. The kidnapper was Richard Ivanitz. Kara identified him immediately. Everything he had told her about himself helped confirm who he was. His photo was sent out across multiple states. Investigators soon learned that his wife and mother were in Florida, at Disneyland. That explained the calendar. At the same time, South Carolina investigators contacted police in Virginia. The clippings found in the apartment involved the disappearances and murders of Sophia Silva and sisters Katie and Christy Lisk. Those cases had remained unsolved for years. Now investigators had a man who likely tied them together. While police were building the case, Ivanitz tried to run. He called his sister, confessed to murders, and asked for help hiding. She contacted police. Later, investigators learned he was planning to meet another sister in Florida. That is where they moved in. When Ivanitz realized police were closing in, he tried to flee. A chase followed. At one point he lost control, ran off the road, and tried to get out, but a police dog grabbed his leg. Officers shouted for him to surrender. Instead, he chose one final act of control. He put a gun in his mouth and shot himself. He escaped trial, but not the truth. Later evidence conclusively connected him to the Virginia murders. For the victims' families, that was not full justice, but it was an answer. For Kara, the story did not end the day she escaped. She survived. She helped stop a predator. But the person she had been before that day could never fully come back. After something like this, life does not return to normal. It has to be rebuilt. And that is really the point of this story. Not only the horror of what happened, but what Kara did in the middle of it. In the worst moment of her life, she did not let fear shut her mind down. She did not become only a victim. She became a witness who remembered enough to tear apart everything that man had tried to hide. Richard Ivanitz thought he had kidnapped a helpless teenager. What he actually took was the person who would destroy him.